So I broke the stress test. I got to the point where the treadmill wouldn't go up any higher. My heart was still only 125. So they're like, well, this. I said, well, what happened? Like, it's every 3 minutes it goes up, right?
Right,
And after
be here all day.
So I said, well, what happens? What happens to the treadmill? Next? And they're like, we don't know. Nobody's ever done this before, right?
This is Big Northern Bear. Welcome to episode 2 of Cardiac Conversations. My guest today is Cayman Dave, a Canadian expat living in Grand Cayman. Dave has a history with ultra running and AFIB, and in this episode, we go through his history with endurance training and cardiac challenges. I spent a week in Grand Cayman where Dave was my excellent host. He showed off the island's beautiful scenery and best restaurants in between our collaborations for work. During that time, we got together on a balcony in Georgetown overlooking the ocean, where the cruises come to shuttle passengers to shore. So for those of you catching this podcast on my YouTube channel, Big Northern Bear, you will be able to enjoy the view with us. Now let's start the interview with Cayman Dave.
So, hey everyone, I am here in Grand Cayman, Georgetown, right?
Yep.
Georgetown at the quote head office. And we're in the AFIB community. We always hear stories about, ultra runners and AFIB. And I happen to know a guy like that who's here with me today, who's got a background with that. And Dave's actually my boss for the past couple of years, and to share a bit of my story first, I haven't shared, but Dave and I, when he hired me, I didn't have AFIB yet, but I didn't start for 3 months later. And during that time, I ended up in the hospital with AFIB, and so I think it was around February I called you and said, hey, you kind of hired damaged goods. I just want you to know, because my old job's happy to keep me, so if you feel like I might. Like at the time, I had a lot of self-confidence problems because of the AFib. I didn't even know if I could perform right. And what did you say to me at the time?
Oh, I've had AFib before. Yeah, it's fine. Just get it figured out, and then we'll get on with it.
Yeah. So I started, and you're the first person I met in real life with AFib.
Okay.
After that, because probably a lot of people have it. They just don't talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yours goes back some time.
Right. Yep. Do I have to say how old I am? Yeah. All right. So I guess I'll give you a little. So it would have been probably about 10 or 11 years ago I started ultra running, and I was training, and I did an event. I was doing an event. I was seriously training. I was doing, the training was pretty good. And about 3 days before, I went out for a kind of a prep run.
Right.
And I came back and I just wasn't feeling that great. And then
Sorry to interrupt, but can you give us an idea of your training volume and frequency?
Sure.
During that time?
Sure. Well, first of all, I was running on trails only, so everything was by hour.
Right.
But it was roughly about 10K an hour on the trail, was sort of a rough estimate, just to give you an idea. So.
And hours a week?
So no, we would do basically Monday and Tuesday we would run just an hour, kind of recovery stuff.
Right.
Wednesday would be a little more up tempo, like a negative split run would be say 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Then usually Thursday off, Friday an hour, and then probably 2 4-hour runs on Saturday and Sunday would be sort of the volume.
Significantly longer runs than just doing a workout to improve your heart.
Exactly, yeah. So you're basically, you're getting up to almost a marathon. On the trail, on those 4-hour runs, I was getting about 35K on those runs. So yeah, you're doing almost 2 marathons
a week. 2
marathons on Saturday, Saturday, Sunday, kind of back-to-back marathons.
Wow.
So, and then you're also running on trails, you're doing elevations, you're trying to get in, say, 1,500 meters to 2,000 meters for those longer runs of elevation gain and loss as well. A lot of where I used to live, little short hills, so there's a lot of up and down. So that would be sort of what your volume of training would look like.
Right.
So I was feeling, so on the race was on Saturday. So on the Friday I went out for my easy run. I came back and I really felt like crap. And I'd been training for this run forever. It was a 50K and I'm like, oh, I got to do this. That night I sweat the bed. I was definitely not well. Anyway, I got up in the morning and said, I'm feeling okay. And it was one of these loop courses where it's like 4 12.5K loops. So I'm like, I'll go out, and if I'm okay at 12.5K, I feel like crap, I can stop. Like, I'm not doing one of these runs where, you're out there and then you're screwed. You got to either walk back or somehow get a ride back.
Right.
So anyway, so went off and I did the first 2 loops and I felt really, really, I actually didn't feel too bad. And then on the 3rd loop, I'm like, oh my God, I'm really starting to suffer. And so I ended up...
Just all the energy and air
Yeah,
goes
just
out
everything, and started to get a headache and everything else. So so I got about halfway through, and then I got to the hilly section. I started walking, and people were coming by. You okay? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. By the time I was staggering back to the finish line, by the time I got to the finish line, or to the start-finish area, I was barely walking. They knew I was in trouble. So they laid me down, and I laid down, and then I couldn't move. Like they were trying to talk to me. I couldn't talk. I couldn't physically move. All I could do was blink my eyes. So we're like, oh, this is bad news. So they called the ambulance. So into the ambulance I went. They did my blood pressure was like 80/40 or something.
Wow.
Anyway, I got to the hospital, and they had an IV, and I started feeling a little better. And then they came in and they said, oh, you've had a heart attack because my troponins were through the roof. I'm like, really? Wow. Well, I was, well, it was funny. I had no heart pain or no anything, right? It was just, so I was lying there, and they're like, well, sometimes through physical activity, you can get the troponins to come up. So they did the test again. The troponins were still high. They checked me in. Yeah. And I stayed overnight. And then I stayed in the hospital for a few days. Well, actually, and the next day, that night, I started having this really sharp chest pain. And they thought I was having a heart attack. And it turns out it was when I figured out when I stood up, it went away. And when I lay down, it hurt. Which they go, oh, you've got pericarditis, which is inflammation of the heart. Right. So they did a bunch of tests, and of course that's tricked off of, okay, well, what's going on with your heart? So I went and did a sleep study. Nothing there. I did a stress test, which was silly because...
And this was all in Canada?
Yep, all in Canada. So I broke the stress test. I got to the point where the treadmill wouldn't go up any higher. My heart was still only 125. So they're like, well, I said, well, what happened? Like, it's every 3 minutes it goes up, right?
Right,
And after
be here all day.
So I said, well, what happens to the treadmill, next? And they're like, we don't know. Nobody's ever done this before, right? So I kept running for another minute. My heart rate was about 130. Like, oh, this is stupid. I had a CT angiogram where they go and they look and nothing.
They thread the thing up into your heart with a dye. And
that's right. Yep. And the CT machine, the heart rate was fine. I mean, at that time I was still training. I was having no issues.
So you're structurally good. You got no blockages.
The guy came back. Actually, it was funny. I had to go in an hour and a half early. I said, why do I have to go in early? And I go in and they take my pulse, and I'm sitting there just at the bench, and my pulse is 50, and they're going, oh, can we do we get a smaller one? I'm like, what, is there a problem? He goes, yeah, to go into the machine, your heart rate needs to be 50. So we're normally giving people beta blockers to lower their heart rate. Right. So can you keep your heart rate that low? Because that's what we needed. I said, yeah. I said, well, I'll go sit out there. So I sat for an hour and a half, and my heart rate was about 46 lying on the table at the time. So yeah, the guy said you've got a pristine heart. Okay. So continued training, and then the next year I went and did another run. It was, again, one of these loop runs, and after the first loop, I don't know, I maybe overhydrated or something, but I just was a disaster. I couldn't get onto race day, so I ended up deciding I was going to hire a coach. Yeah. Just like, I said, I do all this training, but I get race day and I just pull the plug. It's shitty, and I need probably... So they got into, nutrition logs and training logs, and I got really serious about it because I was just sick of doing these runs and having shitty performance. Anyway, so I've been probably training now for over a year, sort of at that rate. And then, yeah, I did my first race after that, the training, and it was, hey, this is way better. I had a much better race. I was much faster. I had some really good, decent performances.
What was the distance of that?
There were 50Ks.
50K.
Yeah. So I had a couple of really good 50Ks. And then one day, I can tell you it was a Monday. So it was a recovery run. Right. And he had me doing like extra fitness stuff, strengthening exercises after. So do the run, you're nice and warmed up, do some jumps and pulls and just things to help strengthen your legs and stuff. Yeah. So I did that. I came in, had my some breakfast at that point, which was again low, it was vegetables and eggs basically. It was low impact. And I had to go up to the post office at the time, and I was just about to go, and I go, oh shit, I've left something upstairs on the desk. And so I ran upstairs, and I came back, and I go, yeah, I got something funny going on. So I went up and checked my pulse, and it just was irregular. It wasn't racing.
Right.
It was kind of like blump, bump, bump, and then stop for a while, and then maybe a bump. And it was just, I was having no symptoms of breathing hard, not breathing or out of breath or flush. I'm like, oh, this is weird. So anyway, so I went up for the day, and went up, did the thing, and then I spent 11 days basically in this state because I didn't have any symptoms.
Right. You felt okay.
Yeah, I felt okay. So then I went out, I stopped running. I went out for a couple of hard runs just to see. I had a heart rate monitor.
See if it kicked you out of it?
Yeah, and I got when the heart rate monitor said 250, I thought maybe that wasn't the best idea. So anyway, but again, came back and it was the same.
Came back down, just uneven.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing special, but so eventually I went to the hospital. I go, I think I'm in AFib. And they're like, you sure are in AFib. How long have you been AFib for? Oh, about 10 days. Well, so then of course you have to go on the blood thinners.
Yeah.
Because they can't convert you at that point. So they put me on the blood thinners. And then basically said, come back in 3 weeks and we'll cardiovert you. So did the blood thinners for 3 weeks, felt awful, put me on a beta blocker, which I ended up having to stop because my
So they wouldn't convert you until you'd been on blood thinners for a while.
3 weeks, yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
So yeah, so then, at the time we went out west, we were hiking the mountains, but I was feeling like, I ended up stopping the beta blocker because my heart was down around 30, 35. I'm like,
right.
I'm just gonna, bleh.
I know just how that feels.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, came back and cardiovert me, first time, popped, back into rhythm, fantastic, okay. So, okay, well, that was weird. So I went to start back in training, and then 3 weeks later, very similar situation. I was out, same idea. I was out for a run, athletics afterwards. I think this time I went down the stairs as opposed to going up the stairs.
Right.
Came back up the stairs and like, oh shit, you gotta be kidding me. So it was about 3 weeks later. Crap.
Back already.
Back in AFib. So I'm like, oh, screw it. So then I went to so immediately went to Emerge, said, yep, I'm in AFib.
Right.
And they're like, yep, you're in AFib. Go over here. Within 2 hours, paddled me back in rhythm, all good again. I'm like, all right, well, this is shit. So I'm like, oh crap. So then I completely changed my training. I went more maffetone at that point.
Right.
So I'm just going to run at a much...
For those that don't know, maffetone is...
Maffetone is where you really focus on building your cardio base. So you spend a lot of time exercising in zone 1. And if you're out running and your heart rate goes up above a certain level, you have to either slow down, even start walking.
Right.
That means you have to walk the hills, whatever. Now, for me, you have to remember on these long runs, my heart rate was sitting around 128, 130. So when I was running for 3 or 4 hours, my heart rate wasn't 150, 160. It was 128. Maybe you go up a hill, you get up to maybe 150, but it would drop back down again pretty consistently.
Right.
And at night, my resting heart rate, when I did sleep study, I was around 35, 37. And if I was just sitting here in the chair with you talking, I'd be about 50. So that's sort of where I was. So I wasn't already running, and my maffetone range was sort of 125, 120.
So it wasn't that much of a change in
pace. So it
pace.
wasn't that much different. So I started doing that.
You were just more, suddenly you're conscious of it and you have to monitor it closely.
Well, I didn't, right? The point is that the problem was it was not exercise induced. It was after exercise for some reason.
Yeah.
So.
Just like mine, I mean, when I power lifted, it would always come on about 2 hours after I stopped.
Right.
Not during. Right? But I could feel a squeeze in my chest. And I'd be like, I think I'm going in an AFib because I could feel the vagus nerve activated, And but 2 hours later, once I'm settled down and resting, and all of a sudden I'd feel it flipping over, So.
Yeah, I had no feeling at all, except where I'm going with this. I'll give you. I'll go you with. So anyway, so I was doing that and cruising along, and I was doing okay. And then I can tell you, it was at night. I'd had a couple of days of long runs, and I'd have a rest day, and it was like 9 o'clock at night, and I was feeling really, really tired. And it was like 9 o'clock, but I really feel like some ice cream, like just a little sweet treat before bed.
Something cold.
Of something cold. So I went upstairs and I had a little ice cream and I went back down. I had the TV. I was probably watching the hockey game or something, and I'm on this couch and I'm just there, and it's a couch where you got your feet, and I'm just slowly sinking.
Right.
And as I'm slowly sinking and gonna be like, oh, am I gonna make the end of the hockey game as I'm lying down? And I lie down and I distinctively felt my heart go, bloop, bloop, bloop.
Right.
And I'm like, yep, that's it, I'm in AFib.
Yeah.
So, and I could feel it. And that one,
But again, besides the weird heartbeat, mostly asymptomatic.
I had no symptoms. Yeah,
No shortness of breath.
zero, nothing. With my AFib, I've never had any symptoms. The only way I can tell is like, I wonder, and put my hand up here and start counting beats.
Because I feel like when you met me and we started talking, that's when you realized that when someone's in AFib, they can be really messed up. Because I think your impression to them was, yeah, you just coast along until.
Well, no, I mean, I knew of other athletes that were AFib athletes that had the racing heart rate and everything else, right? And that was the problem I had with the whole medical profession. This is 10 years ago, where they didn't really have any connection to the digestive system or anything else causing it. So it was everything was all they just couldn't get past, endurance athletes and AFib. They just couldn't get past it. And most of the time, a lot of it's cyclists that get it with, they're out for these long rides, but their heart rates are way up. And then all of a sudden their heart rate goes crazy, because I sat there and read thing on the internet after the internet about all these AFib athletes, and it was I'm out riding and I stop and I take my flecainide and my heart goes back into rhythm, it's all good. I'm like, well, that's not my problem. I'll run for 3 or 4 hours, come back and go into it later. So I did know of people that had sort of the racing heart rate.
But you have no blood pressure challenges at the time,
and still do.
Low resting heart rate. You were definitely not obese. No diabetes.
When I was training, I was 6'3", 170 for weight. Blood pressure would be like 128/70.
And you were paying attention to your diet.
And my diet, I was on basically very much a low. When you're ultra running, you want to have a low inflammation diet. Yeah. So carbs right after you run, when your glycogen stores are low. Yeah. And then after that, it's like vegetables. My coach said, any excuse you have to put vegetables in your system, take them. So, you're eating an omelet with spinach and every vegetable you can tuck in there. And
a little bit of ice cream for the hockey game.
Yeah, exactly. And a sweet potato maybe at dinner, but no pasta, no bread, none of that stuff. So I had, like I said, my heart was considered, the guy said, oh, you got just a pristine heart, like there's nothing. And I was a competitive swimmer as a kid, so I had a little overdeveloped heart, a lot of cardio. When you're as a kid, you're swimming 60K a week. That's a lot of mileage. So, I definitely had developed that cardio base. So I went to the hospital, and in that time I had this real kind of just somebody stuck a fist up here in my diaphragm. And I got to the hospital, I said, yeah, I'm an AFib, 932.
Sorry to cut you off, but that's how I would feel after bench pressing, and I would feel like someone is squeezing, reached up in there and is squeezing, and that's how I'd know. Oh, later I'll probably go into AFib.
Yeah, it actually came after I went into AFib.
Oh, okay.
But it just felt like I was in the hospital. I just felt like somebody was just kind of just pressuring up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's the vagus nerve, just activated.
Yep. Something. Anyway, they said, oh, when'd you go into AFib stuff? I said 9:32 and 30 seconds, because I knew exactly when it had happened. Anyway, so I went in, and it was, by the time I got checked in, it was about 1 a.m, and I could still feel the pressure. And they're like, okay, we're going to cardio. I said, I think you guys should wait. I think there's something else wrong. Like I had this real thing, and oh no, we need to convert you. So they paddled me 3 times. The other 2 times they paddled me once and I converted. Right. Paddled me 3 times, woke up, came out of after milk and amnesia and said, you didn't convert.
Right.
So I didn't convert back on that. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. So anyway, it was 3 a.m. So they left me in there. They put me on some intravenous drug. So the cardiologist came in about 8:30. And he said, I can't believe you didn't convert. Like, look at the rest, you know, your heart rate's low already. It's just irregular. You don't have any, there's nothing. You know, he said, I actually asked the night staff if they'd done it correctly because they couldn't believe it. So they told me Atirone, I believe, is the drug. It's a very serious one. He said, basically they said, well, this is the last chance drug. Give us a call and, you know, take it for 7 days. If you haven't converted back, come back, you're on blood thinners for the rest of your life, and that's the end of it.
Nice. How'd that turn out?
So, well, I mean, that was kind of like a real slap on the head. And so I
Like, they didn't bring up ablation at all.
No. They just said that's it. And then, so I went to the drugstore just at the hospital, took the pill. Maybe he was in at 7:30 because I was home about 8:30 and I was just exhausted most of the night. I took the pill, went to bed, woke up an hour later, was lying in bed going, I think I'm back in rhythm. And sure enough, I was back in rhythm. So I converted back. With that one
did
pill.
they have you stay on that, or was it just until you converted?
Just until I converted back.
Okay.
So I'm like, So through the whole piece, everything was this AFib is caused by ultra running. This AFib is caused by ultra running.
Right.
So I went and I paid some money to go see a top cardiologist at the Monk in downtown Toronto. I had an electrophysiology study done. So that's where they put the wire up there and they lie you on the table and they give you the drug to race your heart.
And they map.
And they just see if there's anything weird, and you know they're revving your heart rate up to 200, and it's bizarre, right? Because you're not breathing hard, nothing's happening, you're just lying there, and you can feel your heart beating fast, but nothing. And they just came back and said, "There's nothing. We don't see any electrophysiology issues from that," right? And I'm like, and in some ways, I'm like, you dumbasses, of course you're not. Like I can tell you, I've been out running for 3 and 4 hours, and it never happens with that. It's got to be something else. Now this is in 2012 or 2013 this was going on.
Right.
And I went and looked recently and it's like, the first article I could find about digestive in Vegas and stuff was 2014. So definitely at the time, the line was, we can't find anything wrong, just stop ultra running. And, you know, and the conclusion I came to was, I'd had an awful experience on blood thinners the first time. And I'm like, all right, so I stopped. And I had to start looking for something else.
Okay.
So there's my story, but
So you stopped the ultra at that point?
Stopped training for ultra. I'm like, well,
and the
what are my
stopped.
choices? And I have no AFib, correct.
And you've been AFib free how long? Without drugs?
I'd been AFib for 10 years without it. And now, that's why he wants me on here.
Yes.
So again, same thing. I'd been not feeling the best, and I'd been having these episodes of just kind of like getting hot and getting cold. And my mom had AFib, and she got it too late. She was a heavy drinker at the time, and for her it was, they had this, they decided to start exercising. They got the heart rate monitor for the treadmill, and it kept coming up 132. And I'm like, what the hell? And after taking 2 heart rate monitors back, they found out that she had been in AFib for probably a couple of years, asymptomatic.
Right.
And at that time, it was too late. But beforehand, that was one of the symptoms she had, was she'd have the hot flash. She thought it was menopause, but in fact, it was AFib. So I was sitting in the office, and this was about a month ago, and I did my little sit, and I said, oh shit, I'm an AFib.
My old friend's back.
My old friend's back. So went to the cardiologist here in Cayman and kind of talked, yep, you're sure enough an AFib. And now my heart rate has been a little higher recently. So my resting heart rate has been popped up since the exercise, sort of 58 or 60. But anyway.
Right. But you're an AFib right now?
I'm an AFib right now.
Okay.
So I had...
Been that way for 2 weeks?
No, a month.
A month?
A month. Well, I've been in AFib for more than a month, but known about AFib for the last month. So
what medications are you on like today?
Today I'm on flecainide. So basically when I went to see him, again, in AFib, my blood pressure was 127/74.
Right.
My heart rate on the monitor was sitting at 75 and as that funky beating shit. sitting there. Then they gave me the blood thinners and a beta blocker.
Yeah.
Just 25 mils per twice a day.
A metoprolol.
Sorry?
Metoprolol.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then after 3 weeks, I went in and they gave me 100 mils of flecainide to try for 100 mils in the morning and at night to try and see if that would convert me back.
Right.
So that hasn't converted me back. So I'm going for a cardioversion tomorrow.
Yeah, you're dropping me at the airport and
dropping you at the airport, and then I'm off to see if they'll cardiovert me. Now here I talked to the doctor and he said, yeah, he said, we've known about this link to the vagus nerve and the digestive system since the 60s,
right.
But we just don't know how to deal with it. The only way to deal with it is ablation. And he said, for you, you're an excellent candidate. That is it is something in your digestive system that's triggering this.
Right.
And because you have no other symptoms, you have no, an echocardiogram, my heart's a little enlarged, but of course it is because of all the exercise I've done as a kid. I said, well, it's been enlarged since I did a study back 10 years ago, and that was probably from when, my actual physical chest wall on my left side is bigger than my right side because of the swimming as a kid.
Right.
So I'm going back. So they did the flecainide to try and convert me. They're going to try the cardioversion tomorrow. To do the ablation, I have to be on blood thinners anyway for a minimum of 6 weeks. So
right.
Even if I cardiovert back, they'll keep me on the blood thinners.
Yeah.
And then they're going to try and ablate me in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
So
they won't do that here on the island. You'll go to
probably go to Canada, the US, Miami, to get it done. And I'll be getting a cryo ablation, not a RF ablation.
Okay.
The cryo is supposedly, it's less painful, less invasive, and it can be a little reversible, so they can cryo ablate a little bit and just sort of see.
Okay.
And then if they think they've gotten the wrong spot, then they don't hit it with again, and it'll actually heal.
Right.
Whereas RF, it's a one shot. They RF and then you're done. So
right.
The cryo's a little better than that. It's a little more, and it's not as painful, and you recover faster. And then you have to be, from my understanding, you have to be on blood thinners for another 3 months minimum.
Yeah.
After ablation,
yeah.
To confirm you're good. So it's been because I went so long without anything, I started to believe that maybe it was exercise.
It was the ultra running.
It was the ultra running and everything else, and age and my history as endurance athlete as a kid and everything. After what's going through now I'm like, okay, this is totally probably. Now, actually, I did actually have a genetic test at the time, and I don't know if it's improved, but I was genetically tested to see if I had a deposition to AFib. And
right.
The answer is no, I did not.
But your mother had it, so.
I know, but there's no genetic link.
Okay.
To that from what they knew at the time. Now, again, this is
right.
2013 or whenever I had that, sort of in that era. So I didn't have that's basically the, at the time, maybe it's changed again. I'm new on the game. It's been,
right.
I started into the game another 4 weeks from now.
Yeah,
I thought it was athletic, but now it's obvious for me it definitely was diet related, and it kind of everything lines up.
Yeah. Everything
lines up with that. And really, the cardiologist I have here was excellent, and he simply said, yep, that's what it is, and your only real answer is ablation. So, in some ways, I feel vindicated that I was right. I was right all along on this. It's like you guys, dumbasses, weren't listening. Pardon my French, but you're so focused on the ultra running, you couldn't see the forest for the trees, which is a big problem I have with the medical profession. You certainly have to advocate, and don't listen to. They just tote the party line because they're very conservative and don't want to get sued, and you have to be aggressive with them. Now I'm in a more private setting. They're definitely more amenable to stuff.
Too, in Canada, they're just so handcuffed to the general guidelines that is just meant for it's like they really don't want to deviate from the guidelines at all.
Exactly.
Right? And down here, they're certainly more willing to have the patient collaborate to pick a direction.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And more just, yeah. So he just said, he said, you know, the cardiologist was quite frank. He said, we've known about it since the 60s. We just, now, and there's study, you know, I was reading, there's some studies, 2020, kind of getting that dietary link and the vagus nerve and everything to it. 2020, but he said, yeah, we're getting the studies saying it's there, but we still don't know how to treat it. The only way we know how to treat it right now is ablation. Is ablation. And, you know, I have been on flecainide to try and convert, did not work. I'm giving myself 50-50 shot, whether this cardiovert's going to work or not.
Yeah.
And they did tell me that if I was an AFib, that they would ablate me in AFib. They prefer not to.
Right.
But because I have such low risk factors, I don't have high blood pressure, cholesterol, my heart is still in very good shape, that they will
They may as well proceed.
They might as well proceed. Because that's what I asked him. I said, well, why wouldn't you want to ablate during AFib? Because wouldn't you be able to have an electrophysiology to say, hey, look, there it is, it's right there.
Yeah,
you know,
would think.
You're there. But he said, well, when they do the ablation, they only just hit spots they know. It's not an electrophysiology study at the time.
Right.
So
that is the latest thing, though, just so you know. They have some experimental hospitals in the States where they do the electrical mapping and then they wheel you right into ablation.
Yes.
Based off the mapping right there. And they want you in AFib for that.
Right.
But that's like the cutting edge. So you're not seeing that in the general
Well,
practice.
I'll have to ask. We'll see. I guess the big thing is we'll see tomorrow if I flip back and I can stay in rhythm. If the flecainide is enough for me to keep me in rhythm, to overcome whatever's going on down below.
Yeah.
And definitely I had some sort of stomach infection, some sort of infection before this happened. So I'm sure that's exactly what it is. Again, this is Dr. Dave, Dr. Google.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're at a point where you're just in this gray zone. Like, you can't go into them and say, hey, look, I got a stomach infection and this happened. And they go, right, yeah, sure, we'll check here. And away you go. It's like, yep, you probably do. And yep, you probably did. And yep, we can't help you, sir. You know, we can only take you through the standards. So I'm definitely, I have to admit, it's, you know, I did really enjoy the running. It was a real passion for me. And, you know, they're like, oh, you can go out and do hour runs. And honestly, after doing those long runs in the trail, it's like you do an hour run, you're like, is that it? Like, you don't get any of the juice and just, it was just this pure pleasure of running in the woods for hours. And an hour, it's just not enough.
You know, we both had to give up a sport we love for AFib. And fortunately, I've been returning back to mine a bit, but I find now that I'm getting back to where I used to be, that my heart's starting to twitch after. So I'm wondering if maybe, unlike your case, maybe it was powerlifting partly tripping me off, because now that I'm bench pressing more than my body weight again, about an hour later, I can feel my heart. I feel like it's trying to get to AFib and doesn't quite get there.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little concerned about where my future is. I don't know. I think I'm just going to switch to bodybuilding, where you don't push so much weight and you can still feel like you worked a bit. And it's
I think you just have to go find your other. You just have to go, like, you know, the conclusion I came to was that I just had to find something that was endurance based, that wasn't heavy cardio,
right?
You know, that wasn't pushing the cardio. So, you know, so I ended up doing long distance solo sailing,
right?
Where you're out on the ocean for 7 days on your own, sailing from point A to point B. So, you know, there's a certain physical aspect to it, but a lot of it was just sitting, monitoring, doing a little bit of bits and pieces, but you still got that disconnect from the world, and you got a lot of in fact, it was a lot stronger than running, because after 3 or 4 hours of running, you're starting to deal with physical fatigue and other things, whereas, you know, I went, days without seeing a soul or anything, and it was, fantastic. So I think you just have to find other challenges.
Yeah. Because you still have that drive, right? Like, if you're into a demanding sport, you still never lose the drive. You feel robbed of it.
Yeah.
And you do need to satisfy that drive.
Yeah, you just have to go find other things and other other avenues and replace it with something else. But
Right.
you know, I think in a way it's just prepping you for life, because there's things, you know, I joke about, I tell my kids, I'm like, look, there's things you can do you're going to do in your 20s that you're not going to do in your 30s. So
Absolutely.
in your 20s, go do them now, you know, and then there's things in your 30s that you're not going to do in your 40s. You know, it's like, hey, yeah, I don't mind backpacking up a mountain and sitting in -40 and watching your urine freeze in the morning. And it's like, you know, it's like when you get to 45, you're like, no,
Yeah, I'm good with
I
that.
want to do that shit. I want to.
I'll watch you do it.
Oh, what's some? Yeah, I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. So, you know, I think in some ways, you know, to me, it's just kind of one of those things of life, and it's like, okay, well, that one got taken away, so now you got to go find something else to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know?
So looking back, do you think the decision to just stop running at the time was really the right decision, or do you think you should have just?
I think if I had have continued on, it would have. Now, you know, in hindsight, you know, the answer would have been, oh yeah, I'm in AFib, don't run to the hospital, wait for a few hours. Is that little pain in their stomach gone?
Right.
Right. Now, at the time, they had given me flecainide to take as pill in the pocket, which I never did take.
Right.
Now, from my experience now, it looks like it probably wouldn't have worked. So, you know, I think in retrospect, if I had continued on, whatever was going on, it would have happened again. I would have taken the pill in the pocket.
Right.
It wouldn't have flipped over. Maybe the cardiovert would have worked because whatever was triggering it maybe subsided. But, you know, I think it was the right decision to stop and say, no.
Well, the AFib did stop.
It stopped. I didn't have any issues. And you know, I think, and after the electrophysiology study where they said, can't find anything wrong, you know, there's nothing to ablate effectively. It's like, okay, you know, you're just a time bomb at that point. So you got to go find something else to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, now I've done I still do lots of walking, and I've been able to replace that and do, you know, about 3 or 4 hours of walking, walk hills and not have any issues.
Yeah.
So take advantage of, you know, and just take advantage of being a little older, going, all right, I'm just going to go a little slower.
Well, down here, you've essentially made walking part of your lifestyle,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Like you're not taking the car for lunch, as I found out. We don't
Yeah.
take the car for lunch.
Yeah, we just walk somewhere.
It's 4 kilometers to the restaurant. Let's just go hoof it.
Right, exactly. Have our lunch and then come back. So, yeah, and you know, here with the weather being nice all year round, there's no excuse not to get out and walk,
Exactly.
right? And it doesn't rain. You know, the rain, it's like, oh, you look at the window, it's raining, wait 10 minutes, it'll pass, and then you go for your walk, right? So I think, you know, and when I was living, you know, on the boat and doing the boating thing, of course, I didn't have a car, so everything was walking. You were always walking, usually with a couple of armful of groceries back or something, right? And, you know, there's physically demanding stuff and swimming. So just low impact, you know, just trying to have a healthy life.
You're doing all of this anyway right now with AFib,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I don't have any. But well, you've been around me now for a bit. Have you ever seen me short of breath or whatever
No.
for all the walking or anything? So it's like,
No, you walk faster than me. I was having trouble keeping up to you going for lunch the other day.
right.
Like, Jesus, those long legs. He's just, you know, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's warm too. Like it's not, you know, it's warm. It's not, you know, 28, 29 degrees and sun. So it's not like it's a cool day either, right? So, but I'm having, you know, I have no issues running and not even breaking a sweat really. So
I think that a big reason why I wanted you in particular to come on is because people with AFib, most of them don't have AFib because they don't do enough exercise.
right.
Right? And quite often I'll have people say, well, look at ultra runners, they trigger their AFib.
Right.
Right? So you are doing a marathon Saturday and another marathon Sunday.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing than someone going out and doing a 45-minute to an hour brisk walk.
Right.
You're in a whole other level,
Yeah.
right?
With altitude too. I mean, don't
With altitude.
add that too, because if you look at most marathons, even Boston, you know, it's considered a hilly one.
Right.
It's not that hilly if you compare it to like running, you know, all right, go out and run. Well, it wasn't quite, like say 35K.
Ultras are usually off-road.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm running on a trail, 35K, and you're doing 1,500 meters of elevation gain.
Right. So
right?
I mean,
twice, Saturday and Sunday.
so you cannot compare your hour workout on the treadmill with anything like what an ultra runner does.
Right.
And there's no statistics that show the hour on a treadmill people have more AFib than anyone else. In fact, they have less. It doesn't happen until you get to around 2.5 hour training sessions multiple times a week
Yeah.
when you start seeing the AFib show up. So I think I just
I
really
think-
want to stress that most people with AFib need to exercise more, not less. Dave's the exception.
Yeah, and I
So-
think the important thing that my takeaway from it is that it's not always, for me, it's not exercise induced. That's what it boils down to. I think it's probably something with vagus nerve and digestive and everything else, and the
Yeah.
vagus nerve just gets uber toned because of the exercise, and then something happens to your digestive system.
It could be multifactorial, right? Like you're doing the running, which leaves you a little more susceptible, and then you go have maybe a very bubbly couple of drinks or something that give you a little bit of gas that pushes it.
Yeah.
Like I think the things sort of add up. I think it's why so many people have trouble just finding exactly what their trigger is, because really you might have 6 triggers, and if you hit any 3 of them on a given day, that's what's gonna
Yeah, so I
set you
think,
off. So
yeah, I mean, I think, I'd be very leery about tying it, and all the stuff I've read, we're talking serious athletes,
yeah.
and with a long history, like, remember, I had a history of, as a kid, I was swimming
Your
60K
whole life. Yeah.
a week. So I had in my main development years between 14 and 17,
Yeah.
right, prime development years, I was doing 60K a week in a pool,
Right.
right? 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. So I have an overdeveloped heart and an overdeveloped cardiovascular system, right? And then I take up ultra running in my 40s.
Which is why you're able to ultra run and keep your heart so low, because you had that swimming background.
Exactly.
Right? So yeah, so you're not, I'm going to say not the typical AFib.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, and so, so somebody that said, oh, I go for a walk and go into AFib, that's a totally,
Whole different.
that's a different animal. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely if you're out for an hour walk,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely get your, you've got all those, so for me, I've already knocked down, like, I don't have high blood pressure, I don't have high cholesterol, I don't have any ventricle or any of those other issues. So I've knocked all that stuff down.
They're just sort of blaming the elephant in the room because it's so obvious. Oh, you're an ultra runner. That's all we have left to explain it with. Let's
Exactly.
go with that.
Exactly.
Right? So that's fair. Well, we'll do a follow-up probably remotely after your ablation and after you've
Right.
recovered from that to find out if it's successful.
We'll see where we're at.
And by the time I edit this video, you'll know if your cardio version worked.
Yeah.
So I'll put a little update at the end saying if you
Right.
came out of AFib with that.
Stop the camera now and we'll record your versions. And
I'm going to insert it right here in this text right here.
yeah, it's like, it didn't work.
Yeah,
It
we'll find out.
worked.
Maybe we should record 2 endings.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Record 2 endings.
And no, it's great having you on you're my first live guest in person.
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone else is, kind of the Zoom meeting
Right.
thing in the virtual studios. So, and we left you with a T-shirt.
Yeah,
It's long sleeve. You're not
wearing
that
it down
today.
here. When
Yeah.
I make the trek north, I'll put it on. Yeah, it's great. That's
So I'd like to
Awesome.
give you the final bit of advice to give to that. I always say, someone's in the hospital, scared, or the first time with AFib.
yeah.
What would you say? Look at the camera and tell me what you would say to that person
Right.
who might be listening right now.
Well, there's a lot of people out there. A lot of people go through it, and yeah, it's not the end of the world. But I would suggest it's one of those things in your life. It's a wake up. It's a call to action and call to change, and just see it as a real positive. And don't be scared. Look at it as like, all right, where do I go from here? There's tons of resources out there. There's tons of people like this. There's people like Danny making these videos and all that community around it. But, you should be taking the attitude that something's going to have to change, because what I'm doing obviously has triggered this, whatever that is, whether it's genetics, diet, exercise, structural problems, whatever. But it's a call to action, no different than meeting those people that have heart attacks.
Yeah.
And you meet them afterwards and they've changed their diet and their heart is pristine and they go on and live really healthy lives. I mean, you just have to realize something's going to have to change.
Yeah.
But I think from, Danny's perspective and my perspective, change for the better. Change is good.
Yeah, I think the real lesson too is that nobody dies of AFib.
No.
AFib's a warning. Hey, you're vulnerable to other stuff, and it's sort of, you're being forced to address it now.
Yep.
So, like you said, it can be a wake-up call, and you should treat it that way. I think that's exact note to go out on. So, Dave, thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Really had a good time, and thank you for I just say thank you for being my host in Cayman. I've had an amazing week. I have so much B-roll for the channel. He's laughing because I'm taking pictures of all my food, and everywhere we go, I got the cameras out. But
got the ocean and the fishes and underwater stuff and beach shots and sunsets.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a week.
The video is going to be spectacular.
Sad to go back tomorrow, but
all good things must come to an end.
All good things, yeah. So
Shortly after this, Dave had dropped me at the airport and I flew back to Canada. Upon landing, I learned he had gone for his cardioversion, and after the second attempt, he converted from atrial fibrillation to atrial flutter. So they gave him one more shock, and he was back in sinus rhythm, and he remained so at the time of this video upload. So when he goes for his ablation, they will likely do a double ablation, both for atrial fibrillation and atrial flutter, and we'll have him back on an update after that.